competed 2 years ago in the state discus championship and placed 8th in the state. Last season, she qualified in both the shot put and the discus. She made the finals in the shot and missed the podium by 1 spot, placing 9th. She threw 39 feet, 11 3/4 inches, which is less than 2 inches from the Tiffin-Columbian school record. However, in the discus, she placed 3rd overall. Brook threw 145 feet and 1 inch, which was only 9 inches shorter than 2nd place. Not only did she break the Columbian school record in the discus at the very first meet last year, she continued to break the record over and over and over throughout the season. She was recognized as the Channel 13's Athlete of the Week, and Brook has won multiple championships at various individual invitationals in both the shot and discus over the last 3 years, including being a double champion at the SBC meet last season. She was selected by the track and field coaches as the SBC's most valuable field event participant as well. Brook will be looking forward to setting multiple records as she completes her senior season in track and field at Tiffin-Columbian. Ladies and gentlemen, Brook Boes. Okay, do you have a speech? Yeah, you have to say something.
Congratulations, Brook.
Hi. Yes, thank you everyone who supported me through all this. It's been a ride. I'm excited for this season. That's all.
Thank you, Brook. You'll let your shot put and discus speak for you in the spring. All right. Let's call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Dr. Hoyda?
Here.
Mr. Perez?
Here.
Mr. Widman?
Here.
Dr. Gase?
Here. Adopt the agenda. Motion, please.
So moved.
Motion, Henry. I have a second.
If I wanted to move something off the consent agenda, would I make the motion at this point?
I'm okay with that.
At this point, then, I would ask to remove item on supplemental contracts, renewal of the varsity baseball coach, head varsity baseball coach.
There's a motion to remove the varsity baseball coach contract from the supplemental contract list.
I don't believe,
Move it from the consent
Consent agenda, yeah, excuse me.
and actually, I think since it's a consent item, it doesn't need a second, it just needs, because you need all the consent of all the members to put it on the consent agenda.
All right.
So then I would,
So now we have a motion, so we need a new motion then to accept the amended consent agenda?
Just so I'm clear, that's going to be action item,
I have an addendum to go over as part of adopting the agenda. So with the addendum, it would be action item 912.
I see, so we changed the negative action item.
So we would consider Mr. Malot's appointment under 9.12, is that my understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
The addendum includes some modifications to the consent agenda 803 employment, and that is to amend a retirement, to add a resignation, and to clarify a couple of support staff employments. And it also includes 3 additional action items. All of them are to approve updated job descriptions.
So we have a consent agenda that's amended by removing the contract for Mr. Malott. That's changed to an action item, and the addendum that you've listed, including job descriptions and a retirement.
A retirement amendment, an additional resignation, and a couple of clarifications
Okay.
to support staff employment.
So that would be items 9.09, 9.10, and 9.11?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll amend my motion accordingly.
Okay, so motion on the table with the amended items. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Perez. Roll. Any discussion, any further discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Mr. Perez. Yes. Dr. Hoyda.
Yes.
Mr. Widman.
Yes.
Dr. Gase.
Yes. Moving on to board reports. First up, Business Advisory Council. We had an excellent meeting last Thursday at Tiffin Columbian. It was actually fortuitous as we could not go to the hospital because of the health screening day, and we used that opportunity to go visit the new introduced construction and makerspace space in the old speech room, Mrs. Dysard's old room. So yeah, it's now a construction trades area. So we were given a tour of the facility by Mr. Thompson and Mr. Ettinger, and we then went over to the Pay It Forward project and learning lab over at the garage that we purchased a year or so ago, and that's been refurbished by a generous grant of $20,000 from National Machinery, and Klaus Construction has fixed it up rather nicely to make it a retail space. And we're going to have an open house sometime next month, October, and so from there, then we went back to finish our meeting, and Mr. Navarrete, Jaime Navarrete, has been doing some work with University of Toledo for the last several years, and along with Mr. Mason, and they've taken a number of students up there for this past summer, and he also now has some equipment, including, I believe, the electron microscope and some other equipment that he has available for our use. He needs space in the high school or middle school, I guess, someplace to allow some students with Mrs. Marshall's science projects, so that he's looking forward to taking on some students and helping them with their expanding their options for science projects. So it was a good meeting. We have a lot of exciting things. We talked about the upcoming REACH program and manufacturing showcase on October 11th. They need some chaperones for that yet, so if anybody's interested in that, we could help with that. Any questions? Next meeting will be October 17th. That'll be back at Tiffin Mercy McMullen Room on 8 a.m. Let's see, Finance Committee, Mr. Perez.
We did not meet, but Ms. Perry is here if you want to have an update publicly in terms of our meeting, in terms of the financials that were reported out to the board.
The cash balances report for August showed an ending cash balance in the general operating fund that included one additional payroll. There were 3 payrolls in August. That happens twice a year. So there were some additional expenses from that affected the ending balance. And also we received the balance of our local property taxes that are collected for the second half of the calendar year. That collection was $1.3 million after a $4 million advance the prior month. So that brought our second half collection in the general fund to $5.3 million. The appropriation balances report, after completing 2 months, which is 16.7% of the fiscal year, we had expended 17.1% of our legal appropriations. So that's running very closely. Supplements will be added throughout the year if needed. On the annual spending plan report that measures the 5-year forecast, fiscal year-to-date revenues were a little bit higher than forecasted, and that included the fall property tax collection that ended up being about $75,000 more than expected. Expenditures were lower than forecasted, but that will be adjusted throughout the year as annual payments and adjustments for special needs and outgoing students are recorded. Our next forecast is due in November this year instead of in October, which is a change by legislation last year. And actually Mr. Perez, if you didn't say we met on Tuesday, or we did not meet on Tuesday the 17th, our next meeting is Tuesday, October 15th.
Very good. Any questions? Move on to Program Committee. Mr. Henry.
Thank you. The Program Committee spent a lot of time discussing the local report card, staff professional development, and preschool literacy issues. I know that part of the superintendent's report is going to be on the report card, so I'm not going to talk in detail about that, only to say that we were educated on the methodology for the report card. We've had some great news on the report card, and we've had some areas that we still have room to improve, as we're all aware. We did speak about staff professional development. Mr. Boes provided us with an update on that, and as a result of building the communities, the professional learning communities and the leadership teams within our buildings, there's going to be an emphasis on building-based professional development, and that's a result of 2 years of work by our administration to empower our building personnel to actually analyze and articulate what they need and provide building-specific professional development. I'm excited about that because, as we all know, not all of these buildings need the same professional development. We spent some time speaking about preschool literacy and specifically what we do about children who are not ready for kindergarten. And unfortunately this year, well, fortunately for us, we had 2 seasoned kindergarten teachers in our program committee who both reported that there are a number of students that have been assessed that simply are not ready to start a what I would call a regular kindergarten curriculum. So there's going to be some discussion through professional development and through the administration about how to make sure those children do not fall through the cracks. We catch them early on, we remediate the issues that they're having, and get them ready to tackle kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, which we all know by now those are the important grades, particularly when it comes to literacy. So I'm glad we're talking about that now. There was some discussion about lengthening the assessment period, not just necessarily test taking, but actually reviewing how students are performing in the classroom before they are placed. There's obviously some logistics that have to be worked out regarding that, but I viewed that as something that is not only good for the children, but it's good for the district as well. Again, catching these issues early, providing these students with the additional resources they need, including instruction, maybe aids, and getting them up to speed quickly, and hopefully doing that with the help of parents in the community. Our next meeting will be October 16th at 5:15 p.m. in the administration building on the 1st floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Any questions for Dean? Okay, moving on. Support services, Dr. Hoyda.
Yeah, support services, we met, approved our June meeting. Trudy Margroff, our new food service supervisor, introduced herself to the committee and gave us an August-September overview of food service. Tim Weber talked about the school messenger system, and we're also going to be adding some cameras on property. Randy Conger gave our transportation report, and one of our 2 new buses for this year will be here in October. And he also gave an overview of the turnaround that we had to place at Washington due to Miami Street being closed. And they've worked all the bugs out of that. It's working well. Scotty gave our maintenance report, talking about some repair at the Noble Playground, our middle school spiral, problems with our satellites fire alarms, not our NASA project, and our new track. Also, the overview of the night lock program was given. We've applied for the permits through through Richland County. So once those are approved, and the night lock, which is a intruder door lock that's placed inside the room. The auction timeline was discussed for the West Junior High property, and our October meeting will not be held due to the manufacturer showcase at Tiffin University, and our next regular meeting will be on November 15th at the administration building.
Thank you, Dr. Hoyda. Any questions for Jeff? The Personnel Committee and Records Committee did not meet. Legislative Liaison, Mr. Perez.
Briefly, if you're familiar with House Bill 154, passed the House and is the Senate, apparently they submitted a substitute bill that's been accepted in committee. That's the bill. It really doesn't affect us at this point, but it's been a topic in the state. It's the one that would replace academic distress commissions with a new system of school improvement committees, which would now be placed under a school transformation board. and the criteria would be changed to have, I believe, 4 Fs in order to be placed under one of these, or 2 Fs to require a permanent improvement plan or performance improvement plan. And there's some money tied to it to apparently help the schools improve. And I think it excludes Cleveland, which seems to be the trade-off. And the other thing, that's about it at this point. Nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Any questions? Moving on to the Vanguard Sentinel update, Mr. Widman.
Lots to report this month from Vanguard Sentinel. We too reviewed our school report card, which Vanguard Sentinel had an overall grade of A, and was the highest grade of any vocational school in the state of Ohio. So we're very pleased to report that. We've hired a new treasurer that will begin in October. Officially will take over in January, Alex Bender from, we're excited about having him join our team. We had a visitor, we honored a former student, Dylan Wirtz. Dylan was a 2017 graduate of Sentinel and Tiffin Columbian. So Dylan recently competed in the World Skills. Okay, so we have your skills and your Skills USA. He competed in the Worlds. He earned over 700 points. He earned a Medal of Excellence for car painting. With that, his score, no other American has ever scored higher than Dylan did in this competition. So very excited to report Dylan's accomplishments. One of our students who attended Sentinel. Enrollment is up about 6% this school year. The official numbers are in. The regional Northwest Ohio School Board Association, which will be having their meeting here at the middle school. The Sentinel Culinary and Hospitality Management Program will be catering the event, although it's going to be held here at the middle school. And wanted to talk about the teachers from Vanguard Sentinel who will be recognized there. We have Michelle Spencer, Jerry Elkert, Mary Green, Abby Venturno, Jenny McCoy, Tom Fout, Kurt Malott, and George Byington. Those will be all teachers who will be recognized at that event. And I know we have, Tiffin City has several people being recognized too, but these are the ones from Vanguard Sentinel. That's my report.
That has to be the longest report you've ever given.
And it was one of the shortest meetings that Vanguard Sentinel's ever had. But, you know, the meeting was about an hour. We spent a half hour talking about Dylan.
Right.
And he came.
Why not, right?
Right. I mean, it's just an amazing accomplishment.
That is amazing, yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Widman. Pre-K-5 Task Force, Dr. Hoyda.
Well, we did meet. I don't know that we'll have the same things to say like Chris did, but I hope we build a world-class building. We discussed bond wording. We discussed the building itself and what steps are next in order to continue with the construction of a pre-K through 5 building. We also decided that the committee should meet every other week since we're trying to get some things nailed down now that we have a site selected. And so our next meeting will be on September 26th at 9:30 a.m. in the administration building. And Dr. Gase will be kind enough to attend that since I will not be able to.
Very good. Any questions for Dr. Hoyda? Student representatives. Emma.
Students of the National Honor Society and Columbian Bio Club helped the community by participating in a Sandusky River cleanup on August 31st. Grades 2 through 6 were able to participate in a flag football opportunity on September 3rd, not only giving them some entertainment, but a fun, active exercise option. Tiffin Columbian football is sweeping their opponents by winning all 4 of their games so far, something that has not been seen in several years. Seniors Isabella Shope and Hunter Richardson were crowned Tiffin Columbian Homecoming King and Queen of 2019. Tiffin Columbian's homecoming dance was held in Columbian's Gymnasium on September 21st. Columbians Brook Boes and Cole Zimmerman were both named Students of the Month by the Rotary Club of Tiffin. These two both participate in the agriculture education program at Sentinel Career Center. The Tiffin Cross Country Carnival was held on September 7th at the Hedges Boyer Park, and the Columbian boys and girls cross country teams participated in both of those. The PTO held a spirit/tailgating party for Tiffin fans to enjoy before the home game, September 6th at Frost Calnow Stadium. Tiffin Elementary PTO also held pep rallies on September 6th, including the Tiffin Columbian cheerleaders and mascot. Students in Mr. Donaldson's classes were able to watch a court case and hear 2 oral arguments for 2 cases at the Seneca County Justice Center held by the 3rd District Court of Appeals from Lima. Senior Josh Fanning is a National Merit semifinalist, qualifying him for a chance to receive the National Merit Scholarship. Select 3rd graders at Kraut were able to visit the splash pad in downtown Tiffin and learn how it was built. Seniors Nick Corper and Owen Tomsick were named National Merit Commended Scholars. The annual Powder Puff game was held for Columbian students on September 17th at Frost Calnow Stadium. Students were able to watch the game as well as participate in it, while select faculty was in charge. The annual Clash of Classes was held the same week on September 19th at Frost Calnow Stadium, with seniors earning the trophy. And 4th graders at Noble Elementary were able to visit the Heritage Village on September 20th.
Very good. Any questions for Emma? All right, McKenna, give us your report.
Well, she pretty much handled all of it. I'd like to also add that volleyball is doing very well. 10-3 is their record, and they're going to a game tomorrow at Liberty Benton. That's other than the Spirit Week, which I'd like to add that we had lots of turnout for that, knowing that most people don't participate. And that's about it that Emma didn't handle for me.
So I want to know about the food. You know, we got a new food service director, so have you had any chance to sample the food at the cafeteria?
I have not. I mostly eat out.
All right, well,
But I do.
We're going to want to report on that
Yes.
Okay.
next month.
Okay.
That's a specific thing, because remember with your interview, that was a big part of your interview.
Yes, and
talking about food.
I appreciate, especially since I pack sometimes, that we got a microwave added into our cafeteria.
There you go.
And it's very helpful not having to travel up to Mr. Gilbert's room every day.
Those are the kind of things we want to know about. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions for our 2 students? All right, move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Barber.
Good. And since we took care of Brooke, I'm just going to use the time to talk a little bit about safety. And it was a topic that came up today in a labor relation meeting. Just want to continue to keep safety in front of the community and of staff and of students. So if you remember last year, we had 3 major initiatives: a school resource officer. We wanted all of our buildings fobbed to be able to have a badge system so we knew who was in the building. And we also wanted to implement Raptor, which is our visitor management system. So this year our focus is going to be the locking devices, which when we had our safety security assessment, and actually John Michael, this fall, they all say that, you know, lockdown is still the best thing that we can do is be able to secure our rooms. So every door in the district is going to have that happen. The second thing is, on our professional development day, every building will be trained to navigate prepared, which is our electronic emergency plans on our teachers' phones or technology in their room. It'll also allow for any staff member to signal for a lockdown, which will communicate directly with the fire and the police. The third thing that we're going to work on this year is reunification. Our buildings have places that our students would go if we had an emergency, but what we haven't practiced yet is for our parents to come and pick up our students, because that, if there was a situation, a crisis, that if it's not well organized, can be a very, very stressful situation for families and for staff. We're going to start the reunification process very on a small scale. We'll probably have 3 classrooms in a building to be able to practice that, but that way we'll be able to work out some kinks and be able to identify that we're handing our students off to the appropriate personnel and parents from that perspective. So just wanted to keep that up front. I also invited David Zach, and if David could come up, I believe next month we are going to put in front of the board 2 important items from TCEP's perspective. The first one would be TIFIN 2.0, and then the second one would be the TIF with Panda Express. I know that David's worked very, very hard on being able to communicate, and we have slowed the processes down so that the board can get all the information that they need from David from that perspective, and he's done some individual meetings, and as well as has been with us the last 2 board meetings to be able to answer any questions. And just, I invited David to be here, just if anybody had any lingering questions or anything that they would need from David before the next board meeting.
Thanks, David, for being here. Could you, I'm blanking on the Panda Express TIF. Was that part of the original, I guess that wasn't part of the original TIF that we did with the expansion of Westgate, was it?
So it was part of the original concept.
Yeah.
There are 2 ways to do TIFs. One is to do a district TIF, and one is to do parcel by parcel TIFs. So it was part of the original concept, but we followed the advice of the City of Tiffin's Bond Council, which was to do parcel by parcel because the clock doesn't start until you do the agreement. So, yeah, I'm happy to send kind of briefing information on that because we haven't talked about that. I know in the individual meetings that I've had, we haven't really discussed that or gotten into the details of that. I'm really appreciative of the way we've worked together this year. So I'm very happy to kind of just kind of refresh everybody's memory on that and send information if that would be helpful, and then answer questions as we go.
Sure, that'd be helpful, I think.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
I know we've had individual meetings, you and I, and about the TIF 2.0, and I'm pretty satisfied with the information I'm given. So, any other board members have further questions?
Regarding Panda,
Zach?
then, would you just want to address that at the Finance Committee meeting? I don't want to drag you out again if you've already been out twice, but I think at that one, because then you would trigger it by giving us notice that you intend to do it, or we would waive notice on that, correct? For the Panda, that TIF?
So, you know, one of the things that I try to caution myself is to give legal answers to questions that I'm not 100% sure of. I believe that since the information was given quite a while ago that we've satisfied the official notification requirements. I can double check that. But I think we're good with respect to meeting the requirement of the Ohio Revised Code to notify the district of the intention and provision of information. But I can certainly double check that. So the intention would not to be for ask for that. And we certainly have enough time if we were to discover in the next week. We can certainly allow for that, but it's been, I think, several months, but I don't want to speak to the legal technicality of it.
No, yeah, you're correct in that this is part of the car wash, and then the Panda were pieces of revenue that the city were counting on to be able to build the infrastructure for the project. So it has been a while. I could reshare. From David's perspective, there was even a couple of years ago, a couple of properties that were identified that were potentially going in where they would need this in order for the project to be completed.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you, David.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm going to have Jen Losey come up next to talk a little bit about the report card. And then we're going to continue to look at the report card as a board and as a community every month. I've asked Jen to identify one of the sections of the report card each month to talk about and to take a little bit of a deeper dive to be able to educate all of us on exactly what it is, how it's measured, and how we're going to improve on it. So I believe that in her first month, next October, she'll talk about achievement, that particular section. And you're going to see some things on here that we are proud of. But obviously, we're not satisfied as where we're at. But I know that staff is working extremely hard for improvements, and we're excited about some of the results that we were able to see.
So thank you. I am eager to share the results tonight, but as I'd like to point out, this is just one measure for our district. And while we're very proud of the strides that we're making, we realize that the work we do on a daily basis is really what's going to carry us forward and going to bring our students to being successful citizens. So I want to thank all of our teachers for all of their hard work. So as we look at the local report card, it's really important. I know at all times we want to know how do we compare to others. So if we were to look across the state, 80% of districts earned a C, of which Tiffin City Schools is part of that 80%. If we were to dig down and go a little bit deeper, you will look and you will see as far as the county goes, our performance index happens to match 4 out of 5 districts in Seneca County. We match Hopewell, Loudon, Seneca East, New Riggle, and Old Fort. In regards to our value added grade of an A, there is only one other district in Seneca County who matches us. If you were to look at K through 3 literacy, there's only one other district who also earned a C, and we are actually only 3/10 away from scoring higher than them. So we're very, very proud of that work. If you were to dig down deeper and look at the SBC, because we always like to know how do we compare to our locals in regards to athletics and different things, there are only 2 out of 9 districts who have scored higher than us in K through 3 literacy, and only one other district matched us in regards to our prepared for success grade. If we were to look at similar districts, ODE happens to identify 20 similar districts, and if we were to look at that data, what we have found is that we are definitely matching high performance or doing very well in our gifted value added, along with our K through 3 literacy, and then again, just to point out, prepared for success. Most districts really struggle in the area of prepared for success, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, but we'll dig into that actually in the coming months when we actually talk more specifically about prepared for success.
Jen?
Yes.
With Prepared for Success, we were the only district in our 20 SIMs that received a C. Everybody else was a D or an F.
D or an F. Yes. Yep. So when it comes to looking at achievement, what we would like to highlight is that our performance index has increased in all of our buildings. When we look at our individual tested areas, we outscored the state in 13 of those areas. If we look at our scores from previous years, we have outtested ourselves in 9 of the areas. When we move on and we look in the area of K through 3 literacy, we have a great deal to celebrate in this area. We were able to raise our grade to a C. Washington moved from a D last year to a B this year, and Kraut has moved from an F to a C. The staff, Lincoln up to Kraut, has done a phenomenal job of building a foundation, identifying students' needs, and working to develop skills in those students so that they can move from being off track to now being on track. That's how that K through 3 literacy piece works. And I would have to say a lot of our work, last year we used this as a focus area and had Jamie Barrows come in and work with us. And I would say that that work is starting to pay off. And then she's also assisting us this year in more with a coaching model. So we're very excited to see how that continues to work for our K through 3 students. Next, the area we want to look at is gap closing. When you're looking at gap closing, you're really talking about intentional work, and they specifically measure how students are doing in English language arts, math, and they look at graduation rate. 2 years ago, we had an F in this area, and we presently are able to maintain a B, which we also had last year. This area can be very difficult because what it's doing is it's looking at your most vulnerable students and how they are performing. When it comes to looking at our individual buildings in gap closing, Kraut and Noble have earned an A, so we're very proud of those two buildings. Next is the area of progress. Progress is where you're actually looking at value-added data, and our overall grade with value added is a C, gifted is an A, lowest 20% we have earned a C, and in the area of students with disabilities, unfortunately, we have continued to earn an F in this area. This is an area that will definitely be one of focus. We realize that we have strides we need to make in this area. We are aware that there is concern. There is always concern when it comes to all of our students, but specifically in regards to our students with disabilities. Two things that we're trying to do this year is we're working with our state support team, and we have, Tiffin Columbian is going through a series called Closing the Gap. And Tiffin Middle School is also participating in an IDEA series. Both of those series will help us in truly looking at the instructional practices and what we're doing to address all students' needs and really getting everyone to truly understand, first and foremost, they are students. And it is all of our responsibilities to make sure that our students are succeeding. So I really hesitate when we say students with disabilities and that we've earned an F, in that people assume that it means that something is wrong with our students. It is not that something is wrong with our students. Our students learn differently. And then the other assumption that I always am fearful of is that people will also then assume that our special education staff, our intervention specialists, are not doing their job. That is not the case. It is not our intervention specialist's job to educate these students. It's all of our staff's job to educate these students. And so we're going to be working really hard to make sure that we all work together to address those needs.
Hey, Jen, if I could on that too.
Yes.
We actually raised our hand to get help from the state.
Yep.
With this piece. You know, it wasn't something that was forced. Julie Frankel's working with us and is going to do a real good job in that. But I just want to kind of point out too, through the curriculum audit, when we first got here, we discovered that a lot of our special needs classes were using extended standards and not the standards, which we've been working through from that perspective. And then that F in the progress also translates into the gap closing. So we actually received an A in gap closing. We were a 96.7% in gap closing. But because any one of those particular areas, students with disabilities gets an F, you get docked a grade. So, but I want to just point out though, as you can see from your data, 2016-17 in gap closing, we were a 47.3% F. And now we're a 96.7% A. So that's a lot of work. And it's really not only on second and third tiered intervention, it's what's happening in the general classroom with our teachers being able to specifically work with different students.
Right. Could you explain something here?
Absolutely.
I see we've done very well with the gap closing. What percentage of our students with disability are included in that gap closing? You know, I guess, is there overlap there?
Yeah.
What percentage of students do we have that are disabilities? Or are those disabilities the same as those included in the total picture of gap closing?
Okay, so all students with disabilities are counted in that category. And A student with a disability can be a student who is receiving speech and language services only, or it could be a student who is receiving services in, say, one of our LI classrooms. So it could be a student who's identified to be autistic, learning disabled, there's a variety of categories. But I'll specifically go more in depth with that in the coming months when I specifically talk about that particular area. But that's a great question.
Thank you.
So. The other thing that I wanted to point out, what is nice about the professional development going back to the buildings is that as you start to look through the data for each building is very unique in how they handle things and in regards to what their strengths are. So the idea of turning some of that professional development back to them and supporting them with their needs is very exciting because we can truly start to support them at their level and take them to the next level with what they need. When you look at value added, overall, Noble and Tiffin Columbian earned a B. Gifted, we had A's at Tiffin Middle School and Tiffin Columbian. And then our lowest 20% earning a C was Noble and Tiffin Middle School. Next is graduation rate. Graduation rate for Tiffin Columbian is very good. This is an area we excel in. We have continued to earn an A. Part of that, I think, is due to the fact that our guidance staff has done a phenomenal job of really getting to know our students and working with them to address what their needs may be. They have already started to sit down with students who are in jeopardy of not meeting the graduation requirements and held parent meetings and really started to outline what it is that we need to do in regards to helping those students to graduate. Our credit recovery program does a really nice job of, we are able to test students, and if they meet certain criteria, we don't make them go back and redo everything. We just move on from where they have those gaps and they need to continue to move. Collaboration, Vanguard Sentinel does an exceptional job of working with us to help make sure that we can get industry credentials for our students whenever possible. So a huge shout out to them. Last is the Prepared for Success, and I just really want to remind you that this data is 2 years in arrears. So when you look at it and you see that we've earned a C, keep in mind that what we're doing with our students the last 2 years, you're really not going to start to see until next year's report card. But we're very excited about the strides that we feel we're making in this area. If you were to look at just our current freshman class, we have 56% of our current freshmen who are enrolled in CCP, AP, or tech programs. I would say you'd be very hard pressed to walk into any other high school that could boast those types of numbers for their freshman class. We've worked really, really hard to try to educate our 8th graders before they come up to the high school so that they're aware of what their options are and really tried to help them to understand that as you go into high school or as you go into life, it's not about that one thing that you're doing, but what are several things that you could do to be successful? What's that backup plan and how you're going to help succeed? So a huge shout out to Chris Joyce and Mrs. Malott for their help in working with our junior high students and preparing them as they move forward into high school.
Jen, too, with that, I sent a note to the board, but the Lieutenant Governor called a couple of weeks ago and recognized the job we're doing in this particular area. And he wanted 4 examples of students who have been successful through CCP or through industry credentials. And we gave them Andrew Branson, who had 30 hours of CCP and on his own earned his EMT, an industry credential. Maya Klaus Henry, 30 credits through TU, through her 3rd year of high school, participated in CCP, allowed her to graduate early, ran a t-shirt design business, photography business, and was recognized by Heidelberg as a Young Entrepreneur Award. Dylan Wirtz, who Chris had mentioned, and his ventures with going to USA Skills Competition and placing 7th. And then Noah Faber, a graduate last year who was in precision machinery and was offered a job right out of high school and is doing really, really well. So So in the governor's talks, he's going to highlight those 4 students from Tiffin Columbian and try to, I think, push more of the comprehensive high schools to ensure kids are leaving prepared to succeed.
And I just would like to add, I have a freshman who is at Bowling Green State University who graduated from Tiffin Columbian last year, and I cannot thank Tiffin City Schools enough for the education that she received. She is actually considered a sophomore, and she's taking a 3,000 level course in psychology, and she said, "It's easy, Mom. My teachers, Mrs. Musgrave, and all of those at Columbian really prepared me for how to do these things and how to be successful." So Tiffin City Schools is a destination district, and it's only going to get better. So thank you for your support, and thank you so much to all the teachers and staff who help us to have the report card that we do have. Anybody have any questions?
Yes, I'd like to thank you for the job that you've done and the staff. I know sometimes it come across as confrontational to you, but it's only because I care about the kids in our district and because I think you've risen up to the challenge here. And I think the report also includes that our K and our 1 and our 3 buildings in Noble or Lincoln, or that they've all got A's and B's. And I think it's part of the philosophical change of my fellow board members, starting with the Lincoln Pre-K, and that we're starting to see developments and changes in the philosophy, and it's going to pay off eventually, I think, at the higher levels. I think we just need to stick to it and support our staff in that regard. But kudos to the principals and the staff at these buildings.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So,
Thank you, Jen, for educating us. I look forward to being further educated. And this is basically our way of getting data. And to make decisions, you need data. And sometimes data is hard to get in our brains because I got to admit, there's a lot of crossover here, and it gets confusing to decide what group's what. And sometimes the scores seem like they pertain to different items. So I'm still learning. So the more you guys talk about them, the better I get at them.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
I'm just gonna highlight a couple of things non-academic from that perspective in the first month of school. I think the first thing is, district-wide, want to thank Michelle Tuitt and Jill Miller in all they've done to collaborate with different organizations such as the Seneca Public Library and Mental Health Board and many others, working with reducing the stigma in Seneca County as we're talking about mental health. And the focus was suicide prevention, inclusionary services. They've done a lot this month, which was Suicide Prevention Month, and had a bunch of kids participating in the parade on Saturday. So I want to thank them. At Lincoln, we had a Grandparents' Day, had an excellent turnout. Every child had a significant adult with them, I think, which was great, where they were able to complete some activities and then have a snack together. Kraut has worked really hard to establish their lead measures for this year, which you'll see in an article that was featured in the school board, which I'll talk about in a minute. That they've really done a good job, and their lead measures are based on student-teacher interactions, positive interactions, and also literacy. At Noble, with the loss of Christy Schuff's husband, Jeff, the staff has really rallied to support her through the grieving process, and she's going to be out for a little while, and they're just a very, very tight unit, and are doing everything they can to help her through a very tough time. Tiffin Middle School raised money, a substantial amount of money to donate to the Red Cross for the hurricane relief in the Bahamas. And then at the high school, like our student rep said, we had a great homecoming week. Our kids represented themselves in all phases in a tremendous manner. All 3 of our new teachers at the high school are doing very well, doing terrific jobs. In our pre-construction management class is filled, and it's a big hit. Kids love it, and we're already talking about another section possibly for second semester. So those are some really great things. Then in the Ohio School Board Association, I sent across the district on page 34. There's a very well-written article by Dr. Judy Jackson May on the vital role of the classified staff in student achievement. It features Jerry Baker, Jan Beard, and Hugh Anderson, one of our bus drivers in Kennedy. But it really talks just about our staff's willingness to do anything they can to improve not only academic barriers with our students, but actual student achievement. So it's really great to be able to have our classified staff, who are many times our unsung heroes, to be recognized in this, and we're very, very proud of the work that they do.
Thank you. Mr. Barber, any questions for Superintendent? Go with the Assistant Superintendent's report. Mr. Boes.
Thank you, Dr. Gase. Good segue there, Mr. Barber, with unsung heroes with our classified staff. I have a retirement recognition tonight for Mrs. Sharon Roush. Unfortunately, Sharon couldn't be with us tonight, but nonetheless, we certainly want to recognize her for her 22 years of service within Tiffin City Schools. Most recently, she was a paraprofessional aide here at Tiffin Middle School, serving students with emotional and academic needs. Sharon will be remembered as a caring and compassionate educator who enjoyed working with the teachers and students. In her retirement, she looks forward to doing some traveling and spending time with her husband and her family. And we certainly want to thank Sharon for her years of dedication, hard work, and we wish her all the best on her retirement and thank her for all of her work with Tiffin City Schools. So thank you, Sharon. We appreciate everything that you have done for us and wish you all the best. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Boes? Moving on to the facilities or operations report. Scott.
Tonight, I'd like to talk about two items that we have on the agenda tonight. The auction of the West Junior High property. The process actually started back in July when I had put out a 60-day notice to the two local charter schools. We have to offer them the property first, and neither one within the 60 days notified us they were interested. Starting tomorrow, we'll advertise in the newspaper a 30-day notice of the intent to sell as part of the steps and procedures. The auction is set for November 5th at 11 o'clock on the property. The one remaining question that we do have is, do we want to hold a public or have a board meeting, a special board meeting in November to accept the bid if somebody bids the minimum of 190?
I think we would.
It could be a very quick,
Yeah.
one action item morning meeting, if that would be more convenient for the board as well.
Or we can wait till the regularly scheduled meeting. It's just something that we should be able to tell the sellers what we're going to do, or the buyers.
Would it mean more money sooner?
Well, yeah,
Yeah, it
Yeah,
would be,
of
if
course.
they wanted to prep the property for any type of
Sure.
work, it would give them an additional couple of weeks before the weather turned.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a good idea.
We should set that date now.
The auction's at 11 o'clock. We could do that evening. It's a Tuesday. Since we normally meet on Tuesdays.
Sure. Is that election day?
Yes, it actually is election night. But, or we can have it later in the week.
After polls close, I mean, we could meet after the 7 o'clock polls close, we'll meet at 7:30.
7:30?
Is that all right
Okay.
there, Ray? 7:30?
At the administration building?
Sounds good to me.
November 5, 7:30?
All right.
Correct.
Very
Would you
good.
want student representatives there?
No,
Okay, just making sure.
thank you for offering.
Did you say 7:30?
7:30.
7:30. There is a $20,000 down payment due the day of the auction.
Okay. So the only way that would be canceled if
If
we don't
no,
get
we didn't get the minimum bid.
Yeah, okay.
What documentation needs to be prepared for us for that meeting?
Just a simple
Resolution?
resolution
accepting
by
the bid?
Brent Howard, which he'd be more than willing to do.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Anything else? No, thank you, Mr. Daniel. Any questions for Scotty? All right, move on to the opportunity for the public to address the board. The policy would be the person addressing the board shall give his or her name and address, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak, up until 30 minutes total time have been used. Carissa? None? Okay, fine. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 8.01, approve the minutes from the August board meeting. 8.02 is approve the treasurer's report for August. 8.03 is the employment. 8.04 is donations and grants. 8.05, statement of purpose, budget reports. 8.06, stipends. And was there any, did you add anything to the consent agenda, Sharon? I got mixed up on that.
Yes, we amended a retirement that is already listed. We're just amending the date. We added a resignation, and then we clarified some positions. So that resignation for
That's-
Pauline Sandelbach is added.
All right, that's under consent agenda, so.
Yep.
I'll accept the motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Henry,
Second.
second by Perez. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Yes. Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes. Action items. Item 9.01, approve Tiffin Middle School field trip.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes. Item 9.02, approve contract with NCOESC for services parent mentor liaison.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Yes. Dr. Gase?
Yes. Item 9.03, approve contract with Yoga Chuck, otherwise known as Chuck Burmeister.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Henry, second Widman. Discussion.
And this contract is being paid for from wellness dollars through the insurance company.
And that's up to a limit?
It's up to a limit. I think last year it was...
It's around $7,000 or $8,000.
$1,000,
This contract
yeah.
is only $5,000,
So
so
that's-
we still have an
we
excess.
We have a little bit more. What we're going to do is we've changed it a little bit. When he was coming in the mornings, in the evenings, it was inconvenient for some staff that have child care or like to be at work, earlier and need a shower from that perspective. So what we've done is we've worked out a deal now where they can go anytime he has hours, and then he'll bill us back on a monthly basis.
So he's keeping track of the attendance?
Yep.
Okay.
So then we have a little bit of money and we believe more staff will attend this way. So we just have a little cushion built in, and we'll sort of monitor as the year goes on.
Excellent. So we have the motion on the table. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes. Item 9.04 is approve the Exhibit 9 with Seneca County Board of Developmental Disabilities.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes. Item 9.05 is approve the Exhibit 10 with Seneca County Board of Developmental Disabilities.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes. Item 9.06, amend administrator contract. This is regarding Nicholas Smith.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes. Item 9.07, approve resolution authorizing sale at public auction.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes. And item 9.08 is approved auction agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoida?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes. Okay, now this is where it gets tricky because I don't have,
So we have the
Item-
addendum, action item 9.09 is to approve an updated job description.
oh, okay.
Did you find it?
Yeah. How'd you get that?
We got it back in
Oh, all right. Item 9.09, approve updated job description.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Item 9 point, oh, yes, yes.
Thank you.
Phew. All right. 9.10, approve updated job description.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Henry, second Widman. Discussion.
Those are both for the 21st century after-school programs at Noble. Again, that comes through the grant.
Right. Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
So, yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda? Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes. And item 9.11, approved job description. That's regarding our social worker.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's Henry, second Widman. Discussion.
Yeah, this was sort of a drop by us from the standpoint of, we had the job description, we thought we had it approved, but when we hired Jill, it was through the ESC. So we never brought it to this board. We brought it to his board.
And
Okay.
she has her certificate now, correct? The description requires a certificate. I just want to make sure that that's
Yeah.
it. Very good, thank you. So moved.
So motion's Henry, second.
Yeah, we've had that. Right.
We have.
Yep.
Okay.
Calling the question.
Call, okay, roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes. And item 9.12. Recently added. What is the action item? To remove the contract?
Well, right now, currently, it was just moved, so it's to renew the contract, correct? So somebody would have to make that, or would have to make a motion not to, is that what we would have to do?
No, the motion is to approve them.
The motion is
Recommendation is to-
to approve Kurt Malott as the varsity baseball coach.
Okay. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's Henry, second Widman. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
No.
Dr. Hoyda?
No.
Mr. Perez?
No.
Dr. Gase?
Abstain. So the motion does not carry. Let's see. Item 10, opportunity for the public to dialogue with the board.
Yeah, tonight's topic, again, through conversations with various board members, is participation fees. And, we I think, are at a point where we've got some research to the board on this perspective. I know that Mr. Perez has asked for some comparison schools and who charges and who doesn't from that perspective. And then just wanted to talk about some possibilities of how we could maybe brainstorm, because the way I sort of hear from the board's perspective is we want our students to have some skin in the game from that perspective, but also want to make sure that we are being very inclusive on making sure that everyone has the ability to participate.
Yeah, Mr. Barber and I had some discussion about this, and I know Mr. Perez is very interested in seeing these fees go away. And I'm not against the removal of the fees. I think I would like to see the concept of, for lack of a better term, the skin in the game, and that I think people, students in particular, when they're involved in that process, that is the payment of extracurricular activities, I think it's helpful. And I believe there's a method, I think Mr. Barber has some ideas that we could encourage coaching projects, volunteer projects within the community, and we could seek donations for those types of things.
Yeah, just sort of an idea was that like we talked about the river cleanup, and I had an opportunity to go with the students that day with Mr. Mansour and help out. Bio Club, National Honor Society, many of these organizations have a community, a community investment program built into that community service. Our football team does a lot of community service. They work at the Good Shepherd auction as an example from that perspective. So we're doing a lot of that. I think that's a lot of goodwill. I talked to Mr. Hartzell, who's here. It's a lot of not only paperwork, but sometimes it's tough to build goodwill when you're asking families for money, and our coaches do a lot of that. I brought it to Mr. Hartzell's attention and say, hey, what happens if we asked our kids to pay the fee or do 3 hours of community service from that perspective? And Dan's reply was our coaches would be ecstatic to lead 3 hours of a community service, to clean a cemetery, to go to a senior living home and read and do all that perspective. Not only does it gives our students an opportunity to give back to their community, it also takes a big burden off of our coaches. Something that they really probably don't love to do is ask folks for money from that perspective. And our kids, obviously, if there was someone who didn't want to do it, we could have that other means. But I think our kids would relish at the opportunity to get out in the community, and we could talk to our students here and get their opinion to be able to do some good and to be able to save their parents some money.
I think that would definitely be a good thing just for our school, because not only just like us, but even the unfortunate kids who can't play sports because they don't have $100 just to lay down just to play football. So I think that'd be a great idea, just not only to help the community, but to help our students as well.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like the children who cannot participate in sports only because they do not have the money to put down for the participation fee, the community service hours would be a great alternative, because not only me and Emma, we would love to go help and give back to our community.
And especially with our teammates and everything, even just covering that for the fee, it would almost create a bond for the sports teams to help out the community. So I think that's a great idea.
Why don't we eliminate the participation fee altogether and do the community service? I don't understand the logic, the ethic of either pay money or do community service. If community service is good for the community and it's good for the team, then let's just do community service. I've never understood the participation fee. 4 years on this board, no one has ever been able to articulate to me why the participation fee is a good idea from the standpoint of encouraging students to participate in activities. It is in fact an impediment.
And many family and students don't exactly know where this $100 is going. They don't know because, for example, I was on the tennis team and we had probably 20-year-old, not 20-year-old, probably 10-year-old uniforms. And we were paying $100 every year. And we're like, where's this money going? We're not getting anything done with it. I even went to Mr. Kizabeth last year and I said, can we think about something for getting the Columbian tennis team new uniforms? And he's like, no, we don't have the money. And I said, well, where is my $100 going? So,
Emma, if I could answer that, your $100 was going to the general fund, which spends about $370,000 per year on extracurricular expenses. That's mostly for personnel, and also some items that the athletic fund does not cover. So the fees were paying about 20% of that cost, and then the board was contributing the rest, 80%. So the fees were paying about $75,000, and the board was paying about $300,000.
My question is, if we can do public service or community service for participation fees, why can't we do community service for school fees? What's the difference between a participation fee and a school fee?
That's a great question. I'd say the only difference is through free and reduced, school fees are waived, and in athletics, they're not. Would be the only difference.
One other difference too, school fees are mandatory. Pay to participate fees are voluntary. So how is it fair?
In the sense that you don't have to pay them if you don't participate?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But school fees you have to pay no matter what.
If you go to school, right.
Exactly. Well, if you don't go to school,
Right.
you don't graduate, and so, you know, go down that.
Go to school here.
Exactly,
anyway.
exactly. But that's my concern, is and I'm not against extracurriculars by any stretch of the imagination, but it's, the first 5 letters of that is extra.
Well, keep in
And
mind,
isn't it our job to educate every child? And if there's fees involved, let's eliminate those. Just something for you to ponder.
yeah, I think you have to keep in mind this all evolved back a number of years ago when the number of cuts had to be made, and you know, the mantra at that time was cut, 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 and you know, we've changed that a little bit now. Not that we're flush with cash, but we're spending money in different ways now. But I still like the idea that there's, you know, it is extracurricular. It is something that, it's a privilege to do it. And yes, I think it is expensive to put extracurricular activities on the field or in the arenas. But, so I think having some way to pay for that is important.
I understand it's extracurricular. I guess from a student development standpoint, strictly looking at this from a student development standpoint, I'd like to see 100% student participation in extracurricular activities. I'd like to eliminate the extra in extracurricular and call it co-curricular or adjoining curricular, because we know these activities do good things for our student body. They build teamwork, they build camaraderie, they build character. These are things that you oftentimes can't teach in a classroom. These things occur on a field or on a court. This young lady that came up here tonight, Ms. Boes, has worked very, very hard to get where she is. And by all indications, she's going to continue to work very, very hard. We want 500 students just like her. And I've never seen I understand the fiscal aspect of participation fees. I get it. It's money. Ms. Perry pointed it out, $75,000 a year. But from the standpoint of encouraging students to participate in extracurricular activities, no one has ever been able to explain to me how paying a participation fee encourages exactly what we want, which is students to do more than just show up, go to class, and go home. We want them to do more. Everything we're doing in making this district a destination district is pushing students beyond what they believe their capabilities and capacities are. That's what we've been talking about for the last 4 years. And I don't know how many students don't participate because they can't pay the fee. I don't even know if that number is attainable. I don't know if that's data that we can actually nail down. It's like the same data that when we are not sure how many people don't tell us they're qualified for free and reduced price lunches because of the stigma or whatever, the paperwork, what have you. I'm just thinking truly from a participation standpoint. A participation fee is an oxymoron. If we want to encourage participation in these kind of wholesome activities, we should be removing the impediments. And if we're going to place any impediment at all, let's make it a meaningful one, like community service, public service.
And I think you could change that word extracurricular and change that to academic too, because your argument that you said, Dean, for extracurriculars would apply to academics also.
Agreed. Absolutely
So, I mean,
agreed.
And the statements of Ms. Boes, that could apply to academics also. So I mean, it's not just co-extracurriculars, that's academics too. So
We'll make sure
there's a lot there.
that myself and Sharon will sit down and see exactly what that brings in, and we can get that to the board for possible discussion at the next board meeting.
Jeff, are you kind of going to the fact that if you have students who don't participate in extracurriculars because of the fee, do we have students who don't sign up for the AP class because of the fee? I mean, it's a very similar type argument is what I'm
Sure,
hearing.
exactly. A case that I know of, I won't say personally, but I know of as a fact, is a Sentinel student couldn't sign up for a class or didn't want to sign up for a class because the fees involved. And that was a regular Sentinel class. Okay, well, it was taken care of. Okay, so they got to take the class. But right there, that wasn't an extracurricular. That wasn't anything extra. That was a Sentinel student that couldn't afford to take the class. So, and if I remember correctly, Sharon, when we discussed this years ago, and you can re-update the numbers for me, there wasn't a huge difference between the amount of fees collected that we actually collected from the school fees versus the amount of fees we collect from pay to participate. Not the amount billed, but the amount actually collected. I think that number, if I remember, it was between $10,000 and $15,000 difference. So if you're looking at 75,000 and you're going to 85 or 90,000 to eliminate all the fees for all the students, but still keeping a pay to participate, I think it's something we need to visit or revisit.
It's nearly the same ratio. For classroom materials, we collected from the students almost 85,000. These are all last year's numbers. Numbers that I had shared in the past was from the year before. So we collected 85,000 from the students. That came to about 17% of our total cost. The board contributed 83% or about 400,000. So it's about 400.
That's for the supplies?
That's for the, yes, for the classroom materials that we assess a fee for. Well, and actually, we don't assess a fee for all of those. That includes the amount that the board just budgets from its general fund. And then we also let each building have some discretion in the supplies that they buy for the classrooms. And then we also have the materials that we charge back to the students. And of course, we have to waive some of that. Let's see, we waived about 50,000 for students.
I thought you told
50,000
me,
of the 85?
no, 50,000 of the 135.
Okay.
50, yes,
Right.
Yep.
Our net collection was 85
yes.
of a $485,000
Right.
budget.
We actually collected 85,000.
So
in cash.
400,000 came from our board.
Mhm.
And of that,
Yep.
of that 485, is that the 135 a total of that, or is that 485 actually 535?
No, it's included.
Okay.
It's included, yeah.
So with the number getting larger, just maybe one thing that we could consider is, we are putting away a substantial amount of money for capital improvement for the unforeseen capital improvement future. And in order to not make an impact on the 5-year forecast, if we're talking about $150,000 roughly, maybe just to consider, and I'm throwing out the idea, instead of us putting away the 500,000, we put away the 350,000. Just a thought. That way, it would not. If we went that route, it wouldn't make an impact on the forecast.
I think the number we've been throwing out isn't actually completely accurate, because since the last time we discussed this issue, we eliminated the fee for band and flag. So that's adjusted the fee a bit, but there are athletes that do both or other activities. So if there was a vote today, I would vote to eliminate all the book fees and all the fees, because this is a public school. But traditionally, that's something we've always borne as parents, is book fees. Even when we go to college, there's book fees and material fees. I think parents just want to know that it's being reasonably used. There is a free lunch waiver there, I believe. So in terms of the community service, I think I asked you about something I just read today in terms of one of the seals that's going to come out, is the community service seal and how that would work with this. the usual, concerns. Are there any legal issues, making sure it's vetted to make sure it doesn't create any problems? We don't want to be in a situation that we're getting in problems picking what the service things are and aren't, and that it's not going to cost our organization a ton to administer it. I think hearkening back to when Mr. Branson was here last year, he said something similar. He said that the athletes or the students will do whatever it takes. They're proud of their school, and I think that's the part of the equation we're missing here. They do a lot of community service in representing their schools. We were out there for those football games. Those fans in the stands don't all have kids on the team. It raises the pride for the community. It does something for Tiffin. It raises our name brand out there. And that's with all the activities. The Tiffin Carnival, phenomenal. I mean, it brings people to this community. And to see the look on those faces of those kids when they do something on their own and complete something, a race, an activity, a quiz bowl, something that belongs to them. It's something that we can't do in the classroom. We had an athlete here who spoke a couple of months ago. And if we talk about skin in the game, I believe it was a broken clavicle or collarbone, a broken vertebrae, and yet he was still a merit scholar, and he's still out there. I mean, how much more are we asking of these students to put in for their activities? They practice in the summer. They work jobs. They work at the school. They do homework. I mean, I think that if they were here, and I think we heard two of them, they'll do it. But I think that's because we have really good students in this district. So if there were a vote today, I would just ask for Superintendent Barber, what are the parameters for doing the public service? I think we look at it as two separate issues, the academic fees and the extracurricular, even though, as Mr. Henry said, extra doesn't mean extra. This is part of our whole education. This is what makes us a destination district. It makes people know that we're proud of our kids in this district and everything they do. And we're going to give them every opportunity to get a scholarship to compete with these other kids at other districts. If we eliminate these sports or these other activities, these are activities that can't be considered on their college applications. They can't be scholarships. It lessens our market value or our extra added value. And so just for those reasons, I think they've spoken better than I have in terms of everybody knows what the cost is. A month ago, I was talking to somebody, and they were talking about a student who didn't want to be identified but was not going to play a sport because they didn't have the money for the fee and weren't going to ask their parents for the fee because they knew they weren't going to get it. And yet there were the coaches in the community trying to figure out how to do this. And I think it echoes what you said. It's the same as a free lunch or reduced lunch. We don't get the parents applying for it because these kids are on their own at this point. So our job is to help them, as their educators.
I remember when we looked at the fees in Finance Committee a couple of years ago, and I was struck by the apparent arbitrariness of the fees. For example, I remember one of the art classes had a very high fee associated with it. And by high, the number is $60, and I'm not sure that I'm accurate about that, but we're not talking. And I thought to myself, if we had one kid that didn't take an art class because of $60, that's a fail. That's a fail for us. There is no way to look at that and say that's equitable or that's a good thing. Assuming that's the reason why they decided not to. Mr. Perez, I suspect there are kids out there that would make that call because they didn't want to confront their parents or they didn't want to burden them. And I've never other than the fiscal aspect, I've never understood it. I also I think, I just want to say this again, I want to caution, I don't believe we should be talking about public service in lieu of participation fees. I think those are two completely different issues. If you want to do public service, you do, this isn't fine and cost hearing in a court where you can't pay your fine, so you got to do community service. Do you want to do community service as a student and a member of our district? You do it because you want to do it and because you want to do it with your other teammates or your classmates or your organizational friends. I don't think we should be blending or trying to mix or in any way juxtapose the participation fee with the community service component if there's going to be one.
Okay. I think what I'm hearing, if I could maybe land this plane a little bit, is we have two action items we'd like to consider for perhaps the next board meeting. And one of them is for the extracurriculars, and the second one is for the academic fees. We'll do a little bit more research. I know that Mr. Perez has in his hand research that deals with a lot of our local competitors, and how many of them have a pay to participate fee. He could share that with you. There's more that don't from that perspective, and then I'll do the same thing with academic fees, and we'll get all that information to you, and we could bring it with two separate agenda items next month.
Could you also give us a little information about the state of affairs at the time that it was implemented? So that we know we're comparing. Like, how flush was our budget back then compared to now? And then we can compare the decision made at that time with maybe rescinding that decision now.
I just have one more thing that I'd like to throw out there. Jen gave a very nice presentation on our district report card. What's our district report card on athletics? Do we get graded by the state on athletics? Have you seen that one yet, Victor? Andy? No, we don't. So, if we're going to eliminate a fee, it has to be for the general fund fees, the supplies, because that's what we're graded on. We're a school district. I'm not going to disagree with eliminating all of them, but if we're going to only eliminate one, it should be on what we're graded on. I didn't, in this nice presentation, I don't see anywhere where it says our basketball team got a B, our football team got a C, gap closing, oh yeah, he ran the 100 now in 11.4 instead of 11.3. He only got beat by that guy by half a second. I don't see that anywhere here. But I do see it for academics, and we're graded on that. Graduation rate. I don't see anything about percentage playing football, percentage playing in extracurriculars. So we have to remember what we're here for. I'm not against athletic or extracurriculars, but we're graded by the state and the community on the education we're giving our students.
Brings up a good point.
I'm here for the pleasure of the board. If you want them, both combined.
Here's an interesting thought. He brings up a good point. Should we be graded on our athletic programs? I mean, and if so, what criteria? It should be participation? Should it be record? Should it be
Parent approval?
Parent approval, yeah. Could it be
Size of the trophy?
Seniors that are involved, how many years, senior leadership? I mean, there's a lot of things you can grade an athletic program.
And Dr. Hoya, respectfully, I think you know my focus, and it is on improving academics. The reality of it is, though, if we sat here and said athletics aren't important in a community, we'd all be kidding ourselves. There's more parents that know about our football or volleyball record than they know about, what's going on in Algebra 1. And that's just the reality of it. So we want to make sure that we're strong in every single thing we do. We want to be great at everything we do. We want to compete at everything. So, but I understand, and I hope I'm with you on the focus.
I wanted the people to understand, what we're here for. Because I'll give you a perfect example. The largest land-grant university in the state of Ohio right now is having a little bit of a feud between their president and their football coach. And basically, if I ever got to talk to the president, I'd ask him, when is the last time you've had 110,000 people sitting in the stadium for a graduation? Never occurred. They may get 30 or 40,000, but they never get 110,000. And so that's kind of, I don't want us to lose sight on really what we're here for. And I know we won't, because I won't let it happen. But if it comes to eliminating one, I think it has to be the general fee structure versus the athletics.
I'll try to be brief here, but if anybody wants to know what I think about this report card, it's not much. It was created as some goofy tool so that we could assess our teachers, in other words, in negotiating labor contracts and to hold them accountable in some way to measure what they do when we as parents can see report cards. We have 2 students here, and ask them in applying for school whether or not there's any benefit to those students or value added when they apply to college if they can add extracurricular activities, not just sports, any other ones, and what their applications would look like if those were blank. And so that's the competition they're in. And yeah, that's not measured in these, but it's there. And I think we know, I think we can say that our voters know, we know better than this in terms of what we want from our students. That's why we're a local school board. And these little guidelines that they come up with, that's why we're here, to decide what we want to give our kids and what we want to provide them.
Well, the difference between good schools and great schools is about culture. That's what all the data tells us. And there is no doubt in my mind that culture is enhanced in this district by a good football program and a good volleyball program and a great band and a good French club and kids that go to art exhibits and display their wares and students that know how to paint a car and do it so well that they can compete on an international level. And we don't get graded on that directly, but I think we do get graded on that indirectly. I think to respond, and I agree with Dr. Hoyda, I think we're building a culture here, and I think part of that culture is the non-academic part of what we do. That is the stuff that brings you folks out on Friday night and Thursday for Clash of the Classes and the football game. And that's what puts smiles on faces and develops a positive attitude in addition to the hard work we do in the classroom. It's a lot like a family. You can have a perfect meal every night, but if you're not happy and if you're not talking, then you're really not a family. And I would like to think that we can have a little bit of fun both in the academic and non-academic areas here and create a culture and environment that's positive to serve both. And I believe that our extracurricular or co-curricular activities do that here. I've seen that firsthand in this district.
All right, so I think it's clear that we'll look forward to having 2 action items and some information in the meantime for next month's.
Just to clarify, 2 or 1?
Oh, yeah, will it take?
Because I'm not sure what I've heard.
We want to address 2 areas.
We want to address both
Whether it's
both
in
areas.
one motion, I don't think.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
2
I'm sure
areas.
it makes a big difference.
Yes,
It
I
makes
think
a
you
big
should have it
difference. 2 areas
separate,
in
probably
one
separate
motion.
motions.
It could be
Or if
one.
you do separate motions.
Okay.
I think it'd be best to have it separate.
Why? Why would it be best to have it separate? How can, particularly after Dr. Hoyta's comments, how could you possibly eliminate one of those and not eliminate the other?
Good point. Have them together.
Yeah,
Got it.
I have no problem with them together. I just,
Yeah, I think
Excellent.
somebody could amend it if they really wanted to at that point.
exactly.
All right. Anything else?
How do we do that?
Okay. I look for, there'll be no executive session this evening.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion Whitman,
Or
second
second.
Henry. Roll call.
Mr. Widman?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
I don't have a lot of fun. Yeah.
Mr. Perez?
Yeah.
Dr. Gase?
Yes, the next regular meeting will be October 22nd at 7 p.m. right here at Tiffin Middle School cafetorium. Thank you very much. Good night.